Hello friends, welcome back, or if you are new here, welcome. My name is Emily, and today we are going to be talking about books as we do every Tuesday, and today I'm going to be doing the 20 questions book tag. So this, I'm not sure who the original creator of this tag is. I think it's been around on BookTube for a really long time. So I just thought these questions would be fun for us to chat about, and I definitely have some strong opinions on some of these. And I would love to hear your answers in the comments below as well. So let's go ahead and get into it.
Honey? Honey?
So the first question is pretty interesting. It is, how many books in a series is too many books in a series? So I don't read a ton of series anymore. I just prefer standalones. With my attention span and my commitment levels, I just feel like I'm better at committing to just one book than a lot of books. But I've definitely read books, especially in the big trilogy craze after the Hunger Games got big. It seemed like every book was becoming a trilogy, even if it would have been just fine as a standalone. So I think that any amount more than is necessary is too many books in a series. I think, like Harry Potter had 7 huge books, but those were they all felt cohesive and necessary to tell the story. Same with Percy Jackson. There were the 5 main books, but then there have been a ton of spin-off books, and those all feel necessary to tell the story. It doesn't feel like the author is trying to milk and squeeze out every last detail that they can for the story. So I think that an author has to know when to end a series, but I do think it's different for every series. So it seems like my neighbor's lawn mowing schedule and my YouTube filming schedule somehow always align. So I'm sorry if you can hear that in the background, but we're just gonna keep going. But the second question is, how do you feel about cliffhangers? And I feel like everybody, I have a love-hate relationship with cliffhangers. There is nothing more frustrating, but also nothing more exciting and intriguing and makes me want to read another book than ending on a cliffhanger. I don't love cliffhangers in like a standalone, at the end of a standalone novel, but I do think they're pretty fun in a series to end the book. And I think chapters should almost always end on cliffhangers, because that is what makes me keep reading a book and not want to put it down. So the third question is, hardback or paperback? Both. I like them both equally. I think they both have their place, but I do love how I feel like I can, bend and fold a good floppy paperback. Question 4 is, what is your favorite book? So I'm going to share 2 of them with you. The first is The Book of Embraces by Eduardo Galeano. As you can see, this one is tabbed to high heaven, and that is partly because I read it my junior year of high school for my English class. Loved it. I had so many thoughts about it, and I have reread it so many times since then. I think I've talked about it before on my channel, but this is a book that the most amazing part of it was that every single person in my junior year of high school English class found at least one vignette. This is told through like short vignettes instead of chapters. Everybody found at least one vignette that deeply spoke to them and that they connected with and loved. So that was astounding to me, and this book is so powerful. I think everyone should read it. And the other favorite book I wanted to share is A Swiftly Tilting Planet by Madeleine L'Engle. This is in the A Wrinkle in Time series, and this is just, you've heard me talk about it in basically every book video I've ever made, but this is an incredible, genre-bending, amazing time travel story. Number 5 is one that I feel like I have never been asked before, and that is, what is your least favorite book? And I feel like it's so easy to list favorite books, but least favorite book, I was like, wow, of all the books I've read, which one has been the worst? But then I realized that is an easy answer. So that would have to be A Not So Model Home by David James. I picked this one up for I paid way more than I should have, $1.23 at my local used bookstore, and this book was just terrible. I read the whole thing because it's not very long, but man, I was so sold on the inside cover, like the inside flap summary. It sounded amazing. It's about this realtor she's got to sell this house as part of this reality show, and then there's like a murder mystery, and it was like, wow, that sounds incredible. It was like plot hole city. Every character was a stereotypically sex-obsessed, like effeminate gay man. I looked up the author, and I think he is a gay man, so I feel like, you know, a little bit better in the sense of like, I don't know, like maybe he was drawing from some of his own experience and maybe he was just being over the top on purpose. But when I was reading it, I was like the whole time. It was, and the thing that drove me the craziest about this book, if you watched my video last week, I talked about how sometimes I will DNF a book because I can't stand the writing style. And this is one that I really thought about it. If it hadn't been so short, I probably would have DNF'd it, because it was like the dialogue was not like how human beings speak to each other. And not just in the overly exaggerated like gay slang that every character was using, you know, it was like every character was like the same stereotypical personality. It was ridiculous. But the dialogue, nobody says each other's names that much. It would be like if you were talking to me and you're like, Emily, I love your shirt, Emily. Emily, what do you think about going to the pool, Emily? It was like, why are they talking like this? It was so distracting from the story. But it wasn't even like that bad that I was being distracted from the story, because the story was so bad. This is the only book that I have ever finished and reviewed at 1 star. It was like a train wreck I could not look away from. Also, part of the reason I finished it was because I read it on vacation and I had only brought like 2 or 3 books on vacation. So I was like, well, guess I might as well finish this one. And I thought it was gonna get better, but there were like things that were major plot points that they just never returned to. It was like the fact that the main character was a realtor and she was on this show to sell the house. But that like never happened. She was just on the show and they were in a house. It never came back to the selling part. It was ridiculous. I do not recommend that anyone read this book, and I understand why it was at the used bookstore, but what I guess it's like, you know, in good condition, and that must be why it cost over $1, but man, this should be in the free book bin. So question number 6 is a little bit of a deviation, and that is love triangles. Yes or no? No, not a fan. Overused trope. Maybe I was a fan when you know, honestly, even when I was in like middle and high school and I was in that like, I like to read this like angsty YA kind of phase, I still was not a fan of the love triangles. I was like, can we get back to, you know, like the Hunger Games? I was like, I'm sick of this love triangle. Can we get back to the political intrigue and like the murder and stuff like that? It's because it's way more interesting than Team Gale or Team PETA. Who cares? Number 7 is the most recent book that you just couldn't finish. And this was hard for me to think about because lately I think like a lot of people, I've been in and out of a reading slump. And so there have been books I have picked up and started and then put down, but I didn't want to include those as the answer to this question because this to me seems like a little more negative. And some of those books I put back like on my haven't read yet, like my TBR shelf, because I fully intend on reading them later if they just weren't the right fit for now. So I picked out a book that I DNF'd because I just couldn't bear to make it through. And that is Holly Banks' Full of Angst. And this one was just, this is a big book. And I had some of the same issues about this one as I did about A Not So Model Home. Not like the stereotypical characters part, but just the writing style and the dialogue. And this is like, I don't know, it kind of sounded a little bit like Big Little Lies light. And so I was like, oh, that might be fun, mindless, you know, a good like beach read in my room, not at the beach kind of book. But I just couldn't handle it. It just felt very, I think this is a debut novel, and I've read a lot of really good debut novels, but I feel like this is the type of debut that makes people stay away from brand new authors. It just felt very unpolished, and some of the like plot points were just so over the top. I didn't even make it a quarter of the way through this book. I just could not finish it. Number 8 is a book you're currently reading, and I am currently reading The Secret Women by Sheila Williams, and I am not very far into it, but that's okay with me. I'm taking this one kind of slow just because it is, it's not like a thriller, it's more like a contemporary women's fiction. I got this one in my Call Number book box subscription, which is a amazing subscription box that is curated by a Black librarian, meant to showcase different Black authors. And I liked it because I think a lot of the books by Black people that were being promoted for people to read, a lot of them were nonfiction and a lot of them were about race explicitly. But I enjoy, you know, I read some nonfiction and I have done a lot of, you know, that important race-based reading. However, I do want to make sure that the books I'm reading just for fun are from diverse voices as well. So I really like the Call Number fiction box for that purpose, because it's just, you know, like books in every genre that are written by incredible Black authors. So that is why I've started reading this one. I got this one in the mail, and it is about 3 different women who they're at kind of different points in life, but they meet through their yoga class, and they find out that all of their mothers have passed away, and they feel like they're, you know, grieving more than society says they should be allowed to, and they really connect with each other over that. So like I said, I haven't got very far in, so I don't really know what happens, but I like the characters. I think they're really interesting, but I am taking this one a little bit slow just because they're, you know, they're all like in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and contemporary women's fiction is not my usual genre, so I'm giving myself permission to read, like, you know, 10 pages at a time is fine, and then put it down. But I am excited to read this, and I have been enjoying it so far. Question number 9 is the last book you recommended to somebody. So I'm not going to include all of the books I talk about on my channel, because I feel like, yeah, you know, like I'm recommending them to you, but you know about all of those already. So the last book I actually recommended, like, to a specific person is the Percy Jackson book. Somebody I follow on Instagram posted like one of those question stories that's like, what's the funniest book that you've ever read? And I said that I think my first experience reading Percy Jackson is probably the hardest I've ever laughed at a book. And she said she's never read them, and she wants to give them a try. So I thought she was gonna be like, oh man, like, love Percy Jackson, great, they're so funny, but she said she's actually never picked them up. So that was the last book that I recommended to somebody, was to read the Percy Jackson series. And if you are watching this and you have not read Percy Jackson, do. You will not be disappointed. The reason I wanted to do this tag was because these questions are so fun and so different than what people usually ask about books. And that is very true in number 10, which is, what is the oldest book you've ever read by publication date? And when I was thinking about that one, I was thinking, well, like, does the Bible count? And if we're not talking, and you know, if we're not talking about the Bible, then I think it's probably Beowulf, which I read in my senior year of high school. Obviously, I do not read Old English, so I read it in translation like everybody does, but I think that's probably the oldest book I've ever read besides the Bible, so one of those two. And number 11 is the newest book you've ever read by publication date, and that is actually Spore. I'll put a picture of that right here, by David Kristoff. I got that one as an ARC, which was like really exciting to me, an advanced reader's copy, but that book was published on July 20th of 2020, so pretty recently, and that is a book that I gave 5 stars to. I thought I was just gonna enjoy the book, but I ended up loving it. Amazing thriller sci-fi, super good. Watch my August reading wrap up and I talk about it in there. Question number 12 is my favorite author. So I actually made a whole video about my favorite authors. I will link that down below, but I would say my absolute favorite author is probably Madeleine L'Engle. Her books are she has such a wide range of books that they've really meant a lot to me, from like 6th grade until, you know, forever, and I just, all of her books are hits for me. Number 13, buying or borrowing books? Both. I love my library and I love to borrow books from the library. I get all my audiobooks from the library, but sometimes I love the convenience of, you know, ordering a book on my Kindle and then in like 10 seconds I have it on there. So, and I also love my book subscription boxes to have like a little present to unwrap, and then there's like a book in there. So I like to buy my books, I like to borrow my books. Either way is good with me. Question number 14 was also interesting. I feel like I've said that about every question, but that is a book you dislike that everybody else seems to love. So I had to think about this one for a while, because I am pretty good at knowing what I will like. And so if I read reviews of a book and it sounds like, even if everybody loves it and everybody's giving it 5 stars, but I read the review and it's like, love triangle and like this weird writing style, and it's like, you know, a YA, romance, whatever, even if everybody loves it, I'm not gonna pick it up because I usually know what I like. And most books that I read, if I don't love them, I still enjoy them and I like them. But a book that I decided to go with for the answer to this question is, wow, this is a lot heavier than I remember it being, is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. So I'm gonna give this another chance one day. I wasn't able to finish it because I just was not connecting with this book. And I feel like this was so hyped up a while ago, but I still hear people say this is like their favorite book ever. And I just like couldn't get it. I wasn't connecting with the story. It just wasn't my thing. Even though I thought I would enjoy it. You know, I didn't think I would love it and it would be my favorite book, but I thought I would like it. And I just like couldn't make it through. Question number 15 is bookmarks or dog ears. Definitely bookmarks. Unless, you know, when I would read books for college, textbooks, or even like books for my English classes that were like real books, I'd usually dog ear those. But any of my books that I'm like reading now, I will always go for a bookmark. I've got tons of them. Question number 16 is one that I feel like I could make a whole 20-minute video just about this question, and it is a book you will always reread. So I decided to, you know, like compromise with myself, and I'm not gonna make a whole video about it yet. But I'm also going to show you more than one book. So the first one is Troubling a Star by Madeleine L'Engle. I adore this book. My little receipt bookmarks in the back here. But I first read this when I was in middle school, and I got it from the library multiple times, and I ended up getting my own copy at my local used bookstore. This one, it's like so good. I feel like this one really encapsulates how Madeleine L'Engle's different worlds and her different series and different characters like overlap and interconnect, and there's political intrigue, and there's like, it's like so good. If you have read The Woman in Cabin 10, I think you might like this book. And I feel like that's like a weird connection. But if you have read that book, if you've read that one and enjoyed it, I think you will like this one. Not the same at all, but both take place on a cruise ship, like a small exclusive cruise ship. Both have some drama, some mystery, some danger. I think you would like this one. So the next book I can always reread is Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. I know a lot of people read this one when they were kids, but I had just never heard of it, but I had it recommended to me when I was in high school, and I read almost the whole thing after my like junior year history SOL. If you're not from Virginia, the SOL tests are like our state standardized tests, and we had to take like a history one junior year, and I'm a fast test taker, so I was done in about like 20 minutes because it's just a multiple choice test. You know, it is what it is. Some people take a long time on tests, some people take a short time. I'm a fast test taker, but we had to stay in the room, so I brought a book with me, just like I do to every test I've ever taken in my life, and I read almost the whole thing. This book is so good. I feel like it really makes me think. I know I've talked about it before, and I think I talked about it in another book tag video, and I'm trying to remember what the question was that made me think of this book, but I don't know. But love this book. It's so good, and I've reread it several times. And the third book I wanted to talk about for a book I can always reread is Watership Down by Richard Adams. So you can see my copy is pretty beat up. Most of that is because it's from my used bookstore, but some of that is just from me giving it a lot of love over the years. As you can see, this is a chonky book. But this is one of my favorite books of all time, and it is a book that is honestly, like, it's hard to recommend because you kind of sound like a crazy person when you're trying to summarize it, because it's basically like an adventure story, you know, kind of like a Lord of the Rings type, you know, we've got to go from this place all the way over to this place where you're like, they pack up like their whole family and they're moving to try to, you know, find a better place to live, and they like encounter all these different, you know, like side quest type situations along the way, which is like, that sounds really cool, but then you're like, but like the important thing you gotta know is that all the characters are rabbits, and that turns some people away. But don't be turned away, because the world building in this book is absolutely unmatched. It's amazing. There's like a rabbit language that there's like a whole glossary in the back for. There's like the backstory and the lore that builds up this world. Do you know rabbits can only count to 4? Like anything above 3 is just a lot. Just like those little details, as well as the big sweeping amazing plot. I've read this book a bazillion times. It is so good. This is one of my comfort books for sure. Number 17 is, can you read while listening to music? And my answer to that is yes, usually, but sometimes no. And it's gotta be like specific music, usually music with no words to it, or I do actually really like listening to music in different languages while I'm reading. I feel like, I don't know, any scientists out there, I'm sure you could tell me why that is, but you know, it's partly I think it like stimulates part of my brain, but doesn't distract me from what I'm reading. I don't know. Classical music, movie soundtrack, like score is really great. Even songs that have words that I know, depending on what I'm reading, I can listen to. But if I'm reading a really good book, the world could be blowing up around me and I wouldn't notice because I am able to get so immersed in a book. But it's got to be a specific type of book, and I'm not as good at that now as I was when I was a kid. Number 18 is a question that probably any of you could answer for me, and that is one point of view or multiple points of view. My answer is always multiple points of view. If it is one point of view, I like it to be told from multiple timelines from that same point of view, so I'm always a sucker for multiple points of view. And number 19 is, do you read a book in one sitting or over multiple days? Usually over multiple days, but if it's a great book and I've got the time, I will read a book in one sitting, no problem. I've had a number of books recently actually that I've read all in one day, but I used to do that a lot as a kid, but now it's, more like I'll work through a book slow, like how I talked about this book. I'm working through this book slowly over time because it's not my usual genre, and I have to kind of give myself permission to just read a little bit so I don't get burnt out and want to give up on a book that I don't necessarily connect with immediately. But if it's a thriller, if it's fast-paced, if it's got those like short 1 or 2 page chapters, I'm flying through that and I will read the whole thing in one day. And the last question, this is how you know this tag's been on YouTube for a long time, because the last question is, who do you tag? I tag anybody who wants to do it, if you've never done it before, but mostly I tag you to put your answers in the comments. I will put the questions down there as well, probably in a pinned comment, unless I can fit them in the description box. I don't know, check both, we'll see. But yes, I would love to hear your answers to any of these questions. If you love or hate any of these books that I have shared, please put your opinions in the comments, but be nice. Don't insult my favorite books. Just, you're allowed to not like them, but don't be mean about it. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please be sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell before you go. I make new videos on Tuesdays about books and on Saturdays about beauty, and I would love to have you here in the future. Thank you guys so much. Bye.